Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome to another Kemp LinkedIn Live. Today, we are talking about using NDR to find IT security threats, a live chat with Propellent. And for those of you that don't know, Propellent is an IT services company that provides a compliance-first path to building, protecting, and optimizing IT environments. And they're based in the UK. And today we have a great guest. I've been doing a lot of chatting with him, and we have more things to talk about than we have in the time of this LinkedIn Live. But we have Matt Wanless. He's the managing director and founder at Propellent. So, Matt, welcome to today's LinkedIn Live event, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, Frank. So, yeah, my name is Matt Wanless. I'm a founder and MD of Propellent. I've been in the industry about 23 years, worked in various aspects of IT. And yeah, I think it's probably worth adding that I'm also a trained acrobat. Not that it's much use in the real world, but keeps me ticking away.
Awesome, Matt. So that's really cool. Trained acrobat. I always like to tell people a little thing about myself. Like I teach scuba diving in my spare time, and I actually also do work. I call it fun, but it's work as a background actor. So you might see me in the background of TV shows and movies occasionally. But anyways, let's talk about IT.
Yes.
IT is, I mean, I love IT. I've been in this industry a long time. I know you have been as well, Matt. And this NDR, what is NDR? NDR, Network Detection and Response. It's this really cool technology to give us visibility into what is going on our network so that we can detect, see threats as they're occurring really almost in real time. So this NDR technology to help us understand the security anomalies and what's going on in the network is important for us because the biggest problem that we have is you can't protect against what you can't see. You have to know what is going on there. So Matt, you've been working with obviously for Propellent for a long time, and you're now using this NDR technology. Can you tell me a little bit about, what it is and what you think about
it? Sure. So what we see with NDR is, well, let's take about a few levels. At the moment, the average time to detect an organization has been breached is about 207 days. And that's a very, very long time. And it's interesting to put it in context. So say for example, you're going to rob a bank. You've got to choose the bank, make sure it's the right target. You've got to do your infiltration and surveillance. You've got to work out when the right time is to do it. And then once you start the activity, you've got a finite amount of time to do it. So you've got to break in, you've got to circumvent the alarms, you've got to find the safe, work out how to get into it, and then finally you're in. And you've got to do that, get in, do all that, and then get out again in, say, a long weekend, like a bank holiday weekend, so a few days. In an organization, in a sort of terms of a hacking event, it's a lot longer, and it's a lot longer than that because there's no visibility of the attack. So, take ransomware. Let's just look at ransomware. So the typical thing is the ransomware attacker would find the right organization. They've got the right amount of revenue. They've got the right sort of target profile. They would then do some spear phishing or some targeted attacks to sort of high level employees. And once they've got their way in, then it's about securing that position and about expanding that position to understand where all the data is, where the backups are so they can be encrypted as well, and then to eventually encrypt the whole lot and hit you with the ransomware demand. And that we give them a huge window of time in which that can happen. And NDR and the approach there is to try and reduce that window down so that you can see the early stages of that. And it's a lot easier to fix the earlier stages of that than the later stages of that. I think it's probably the best way to approach it.
So if I get what you're saying right, and I love the analogy that you're providing me, Matt, of using this bank robber or this, person trying to rob the bank and similar to the hackers. because the process is very similar where you have this protected building or location, which is your network that has assets inside the vault, which are your servers and your data. And it's not just a matter, for example, when you mentioned ransomware, it's not just a matter of all of a sudden you get this email saying that, oh, we've encrypted your data. You need to send us, 10 Bitcoin or whatever, amount of money that is to send nowadays. It took them a lot of time and effort to do this. And just like your bank robber, you're planning to get into this, and you have to go through the process of breaking in using baby steps. You break in the front door, you maybe pick the lock or something, you get in, your surveillance, you see all the cameras, you're trying to shut them down, or use, like in the Hollywood movies, you spray black spray paint over all the video cameras and there, and you get to the bank vault, etc. So it makes a lot of sense that this is what's happening on your network when these ransomware hackers are trying to attack you, where it's not that boom, they teleport into the vault and they take your stuff or encrypt your stuff, and boom, they teleport out and say you're screwed.
Yeah.
So
it's a slow. It takes time, and every bit of activity leaves evidence. And
yes,
the place you can find that evidence is your network. So this is why looking at a sort of network detection and response tool, the network sees everything. No attack happens in complete isolation, or if it does, it's a very different kind of attack. So pretty much all threats are network borne or leave network borne footprints. So this approach gives you that one place to look, that you can see that early evidence and starts the remediation activities before they become an awful lot more expensive.
And that makes so much sense, because I learned, for example, I mentioned that I teach scuba diving, and one of the things that we learn is when something comes up, an issue comes up, no matter how minor, fix it now. Take the time to fix it. And the reason is because if you let it go on, oh, that's not important, I'll deal with it later, I'll not. Eventually, they're all going to compound themselves and exacerbate it to the point where all heck has broken loose.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening with the hacker. He's doing these little things. You're like, oh, that's not a big deal. Somebody scanned my network. Ah, that's not a big deal. Someone's doing this. And eventually, though, it's all going to come together and they're going to take over or do something really bad. So what you're saying is, we can, using this NDR technology, we can detect these problems before they get to a point that they are causing us grief.
Yes.
And we can shut them down by mitigating the problems as we see them early on. And like you said at the beginning, it takes, 207 days for an organization to identify they've been hacked?
That's right. The 207-day stat's quite an interesting one. It's an IBM stat from last year, but that's for a financial services organization who traditionally spend a reasonable amount of time and effort on information security. So it's a bit higher for other kinds of organizations. So yeah, it's a best case.
And that's absolutely crazy. I mean, if you think about it, that's crazy. I mean, I think about, if I was driving in my car for 207 days, knowing that the oil needed to be changed, and I'd be like, what, I'm running this car into the ground, and by the time I'm done at the end of 207 days, my engine is seized up and everything's blown. I had to buy a brand new car.
Yeah. So you car a medal for 207 days without oil.
So that detection early on is critical. And this NDR technology, this network detection and response technology, is really something that can give us that visibility to get that early detection, so that 207 days, that is the average for you as an organization, can start becoming days, if not even potentially hours, in terms of the potential to detect and mitigate these problems, because you're seeing them as they pop up. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me give you some real world stuff we've seen on this, Frank. So we've deployed this to a few customers, and some of the issues that we've seen, for example, are we found things like VPNs configured where the organization wasn't aware that there was that you know, they had something they thought they decommissioned 6 months ago, and they found, oh, hang on a minute, there's a VPN still up to this organization we don't deal with anymore, and there's still traffic going through it. So sort of a classic, you know, you'd think, oh, it's a minor thing, but you never know. We found things that we found devices on networks that haven't been found by vulnerability management scans because the networks weren't being scanned properly. We found traffic going to blacklisted servers. We found all sorts of things that would have taken us a lot more time, and that's the right way to put it, is you'd have to go looking for it with conventional tooling to find it. You'd have to know what you were looking for to an extent to go find it. Whereas the NDR tool, because it sees absolutely everything on your network, it's just there. So it saves you a lot of time. You get a lot of immediate visibility, and yeah, you see a lot more things than you expect, which is good fun, especially if you've got a customer who's and we've all got some of these where, well, I've never been hacked. Okay, how do we prove that? You know, it's a very dangerous position to take, and we try and encourage our customers to be slightly more open-minded about this sort of thing.
Yeah. So I think that's great for you to highlight, and it's, I mean, for example, the fact that there's a VPN connection or access available after, you know, a company's partnership or an employee is not working at the company anymore. This happens all the time. We talked about this before in one of our, you know, prep sessions where I mean, when, for example, when an employee leaves the company for whatever reason, you have to disable his credentials. So IT team needs to go and disable their credentials. And unless you're this uber tech savvy company that has single sign-on for every single application in the industry, oh, by the way, Kemp can help you with that, but that's a completely separate story.
I see what you did there.
Is that IT team needs to go to every single system that person had access to and remove their username, password, credentials, or lock it or whatever. And they always forget things. So there are always reasons why security holes exist. It happens as a fact of life. Like you said, company says, "Oh, I've never been hacked." Yeah. Chances are more like, "Yes, I've been hacked, but I have no idea it happened."
Yeah, absolutely.
Is the actual answer, right?
Yeah, and I think the mindset at the moment has to be, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And come back to one of your other points, Frank, it's the human element. And this is the thing, we're all humans, we make mistakes, we do something absolutely brilliantly, even if I say it myself, and we do other things, you know, sometimes we don't even realize that we've made a mistake. And it's about the safety nets to find them, and it's about putting the processes in place so that we try to minimize them. And this is another tool that helps you find those mistakes.
And that's so true. I mean, the human element is so important. And so the advantage of using something like NDR is, I think you mentioned, you now have a single pane of glass. You have this, I mean, that's kind of a marketing term, but you have this one dashboard, you have this one monitor with this display of all the relevant information. And the key point here is the relevant information. So there's a lot of data being collected with this NDR technology using flow technologies like NetFlow and SFlow and JFlow and IPFix and all these other technologies we'll talk about in some other day. But all this information then would overwhelm the average human person. The advantage of the NDR technologies is they are smart. They have, whether you call it machine learning, artificial intelligence, whatever, AI, whatever you want to call it, it has some intelligence to do some heuristics, behavior analysis on the data so that you only see the relevant information. So you only see, here's the alert. Here's a problem. Here's a problem. Here's a problem. These are the things you need to be worrying about. The rest of it you can ignore. That's what NDR technologies do to simplify this visibility of network operations, right?
Yeah, exactly. And what we found is it's just saved us so much time. When from looking at a multitude of different tools that log information to our SIEM versus looking at a single pane of glass as a first starting point. So sometimes with these things, it's hard to know what to make the single source of truth. If you've got lots of sources of truth, which is the one you start with and then enrich? And it gets very painful. But this gives us a really obvious starting point of here's all the activities that we've pulled out and let's enrich it with the other data. And we found that works really well. The other thing, actually, sorry, a slight tangent there. The other thing we found is really effective is the commissioning process. So when you put this in, you get a lot more alerts than when you've initially tuned it down. And some of the things you find are very, very interesting. This is where we found the VPN configuration of, well, that shouldn't exist. We didn't know about that. Neither did the customer, which was ideal. So, it's just that whole process of getting everything on the network into one place, working out what's a false positive, what's an actual positive, and tuning it down to a small state where you can see the events you care about is a really good process to go through with an organization.
That's a great point. And I see one comment here, and I just want to kind of pick your brain on this a little bit. Sam mentions that a lot of companies think that their firewalls and endpoint security technologies are going to do what they're going to be the catch-all, and they're going to solve all your security issues. So
yeah,
what's the issue there?
Okay, so they will help you with what they can see. So take a next generation firewall. They're brilliant tools, but they can only work through the traffic that goes through them. So say for example, you've got them on your perimeter. Everything inside your organization, they're not really going to see, because your network switches will do the bulk of the processing and the routing, and the firewall won't see that. It won't see traffic from machine to machine on the local subnet or on remote subnets or VLANs. So, but they're brilliant with what they can see, but they can't see everything. And endpoint protection is effectively the same, but a different model in that it will see everything on the device you can put it on, but it won't see anything on any other devices. And you can't put endpoint on every device. You've got things like printers or vendor black boxes or cloud services or even third-party devices you don't control. And containers, you look at rather than a VM, a container, you can't really put endpoint protection on a container. So you can't get the full suite of visibility that you would want with those tools. They definitely help, and they will help enrich the data, and they will help do active blocking and protection, but they can't do the whole job.
And the other thing I like to mention is that in terms of firewalls and even the endpoint security to a lesser degree is that they only will detect and prevent what you tell it to.
Yes.
You have to configure the firewall rules to do what you want to do, because it needs to know what your policies are. And if you don't configure that, or if you configure it, misconfigure it, then there's this big hole in this door, in the steel door that you just built, that somebody can walk right through, right? And that's Absolutely. What happens a lot of the times.
And the other thing that come back to that is a lot of firewalls are very, very restrictive on the way in, but quite liberal on the way out. And that's no use to anybody when you're looking at sort of malware talking back. It's and it comes down to how well you've configured it. What's it going to catch?
Yes, absolutely. So this has been really good, and I wish we had a lot more time, but I'm going to start wrapping things up here, Matt, because in the interest of time and everybody else's time. But so this NDR technology is really, really cool. It can provide you lots of great insights. It can help us detect the threats before the threats become damaging. It can help us in terms of efficiency of detecting and monitoring and mitigating these threats, that we can spend more time doing proper work, what I call proper work, versus troubleshooting and doing this, root cause analysis and everything. We're talking about lots of different things and the values of NDR. So if there's one thing that you want to tell people that are listening to this, NDR, Propellent, what is important for you, and what should you take away after listening to this? What would you tell them to do?
I think I'd say don't leave here and do nothing. Find out more, because you can gain a huge amount of knowledge and insight with these tools. I mean, we're happy to talk you through it. You can talk to Kemp or talk to your preferred partner, whoever it is. I mean, what we really care about here is that you know how to protect your organization, especially in this day and age.
Absolutely. And that's such a valuable piece of information, because don't leave here doing nothing, because I mean, that's human nature for us to just by default just up, it's done. We're moving on. We're going back to our business and our status quo. Do something.
Yeah.
Contact Matt, contact Propellent, or your current partner or service provider or managed service provider, or somebody. Contact us. Contact your friends or colleagues that are working this industry to get more information, but do something to learn more what you can do to get this visibility. Absolutely, Matt. So, Matt, I greatly appreciate you spending the time talking to me, and I love chatting with you, and hopefully we can do this a lot more and bring you and your colleagues on a lot more to have more of these conversations, because they're really engaging. I like talking about technology, obviously, and you provide a wealth of information. So, Matt, thank you very much for being on this LinkedIn Live today. And
Thanks, Frank.
We will
I'm
talk.
blushing.
I really do appreciate it. And everybody, thank you for listening into this LinkedIn Live. Again, this LinkedIn Live from Kemp Technologies, and about network detection and response. So everybody have a great day. Enjoy the rest of the time, and hopefully we'll see you on the next one and other types of sessions. Thank you very much.
Okay.
And
Thanks,
bye-bye.
Frank.